Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Overcomers. And I'm your host, Dorothy Odell, for this evening. I just want to give a shout out to today's sponsor of to the sponsor of today's show, which is thekimbra.com. So if you have any what's the right word I'm looking for? I apologize. Any need to have more time, money, freedom in your life, then this is definitely the rituals that you want to get your hands on. So go to www.thekimbra.com and connect with them today. And I have the distinct pleasure of bringing Holly Higgins up on stage here. So welcome, Holly.
Hi, Dorothy. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. This show has been it seems like forever in the making. we connected a while ago and here we are today. And so for those of you that have no idea who Holly is, Holly, just share with our audience a little bit about who you are, and what do you do?
I'm a mom, and I'm a grandmom, granny to 8, mom to 7, and I'm a Gold Star mother, and that has led me on the journey that I'm on. Gold Star refers to the fact that my son was killed in Afghanistan. He was in the Air Force, and I'll tell you more about him in a little bit. Because of him, I am now a storytelling coach, and I co-facilitate storytelling workshops for veterans and their families and families of the fallen and first responders and their families, helping them to find their voice, tell their story, and learn how to tell it in the service of others. And I'm also the liaison for families of the fallen with the hero's journey. And those workshops are also all with the hero's journey.
Wow, that's incredible. In order to be able to do that, after losing your husband or your son, that's incredible. For those of you that didn't hear Holly's story, you did. I think it was around Veterans Day about with the poppy, the significance of the poppy, right? And wow, that was just so powerful. Perhaps maybe we'll talk about that tonight. We never know, right? So,
Right.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Holly. And that is a lot, that you do. And thank you so much for your service to our veterans and to other Gold Star families.
I've just discovered, and it's kind of interesting because I learned this from my son after he was killed, but I learned it through an experience I had with him when he was in college, when his girlfriend broke up with him, and it was excruciatingly painful for a young man at 19. And I ended up telling him, the best way to get through this grief and this pain is to serve. So he jumped right in head first, and that was right around Katrina, went to the Red Cross, got trained, got involved in service, moved forward, and never looked back. And interestingly, that his service has been the key ingredient to my healing and restoring my hope and joy when he was killed. So I kind of give him the kudos because he did it. I did tell him, it sounded good to me. And it turned out to be the best advice I could have given him, and came back to bless me many years later.
Right. I've never heard it that way. And that it just makes sense, right? Because if you're serving others, then your focus isn't on your own, what you're going through. So I can totally identify with that for sure. Absolutely. Great advice, Mom. Great advice.
Yeah.
So you in here too, I noticed that you're also with another organization, the Hero's Journey. Is that correct?
That's the organization that I work with, and we have two programs, and that's those two programs. One is a play that our founder, who is Lieutenant Colonel retired Scott Mann, he was in the Army for 23 years, and 18 of those years he was Green Beret, and he wrote this play during his transition, which was very difficult for him, even though he retired at the top of his game as this lieutenant colonel, family and marriage intact, jobs set on the outside, contracts, everything all set up. It was still a very difficult transition for him, as it is for all of our veterans. There's an issue with, I think, losing their identity, especially if they've been in that since they were, college age in the military. And so in the course of his transition, he wrote this play, and it is a composite of many different characters. They're all true stories. The whole play. It's a 2-act play with a runtime of 150 minutes with a 15-minute intermission. It's a long play, but it goes so fast. I can tell you, it's a ride. It immerses you in combat. It takes you to Afghanistan, brings you back to the U.S., to the living room, to the family, shows both sides, and ultimately validates, the pain that the military and their families go through. But it also ends up, and the ending is amazingly beautiful, with hope and restoration of joy and hope and meaning and purpose. You walk out of that knowing that the sacrifices were well worth everything, every bit of it. And even those of us who've sacrificed everything feel very confident that it was worth it. So he wrote that play, and they went on the road. The Hero's Journey, he's the founder of the Hero's Journey, took the play on the road in 2018. And then in 2020, it got shut down, like the whole world did from the pandemic. And they made a film, and that's on Amazon Prime, right? And will stay there permanently. And it was on Amazon Prime that Gary Sinise saw it, and he contacted Scott and sponsored our past year. So he said, this has got to go back on the road. It's live theater. There's nothing like live theater. And so we've just wrapped up our 2023 performances this last week, and just got home. And we ended in Tampa, Florida, where we started a year ago. And we've been to Tampa, DC, Chicago, San Diego, Phoenix, Milwaukee. I just all over the place. And it is. And when we go to each tour stop, we provide a storytelling workshop for veterans and family members. And their tickets to the play too are fully funded, so they don't pay to come to the play, and we don't charge them for those workshops. They are fully funded too, and it's And then in between the play, we do 2-day workshops all over the country, and so our new partner that we just discovered this past few weeks, our new partner for 2024 is Tunnel to Towers. And they are amazing, and they are taking us to New York City first off. So it's going to be an exciting year ahead.
Absolutely. That does sound exciting. I just want to give a shout out here. We have Jeffrey Knight, who is a veteran himself. He says, hello, loss of identity and purpose transitioning out is real. Absolutely. And he would know that for sure. He was lieutenant. I know he made it to lieutenant. I tried to remember all their ranks, but unfortunately I can't.
Every branch is a little different too.
That is true. That is true. And I know Jeffrey's one of my veterans that wouldn't give me too much hassle about that. There are some that would, but Jeffrey is very kind. So thanks, Jeffrey, for listening in. That has got to be part. That is amazing, being part of something like that, the Hero's Journey. And I will have to make a point to go see one at some time. Lieutenant Colonel. I was going to say that, but I didn't want to make myself wrong. So
I was guessing that when you said he made it too, because if he was a lieutenant, I know he would have started as a lieutenant. That's right. for commissioned. I've learned a lot since my son was in.
Well, and that's funny because I didn't really realize what an all-star family meant. I thought it was something completely different, but I got very much educated by one of our ladies that is part of Angels 14 as well, that serves all Gold Star families. So when I heard that an actual Gold Star family is somebody that actually lost somebody in combat, I was just like, wow, that is that's incredible that there's more backup and support for these families, because I can't even imagine what that would have been like, to get that phone call that your son was gone. So, and here you are now serving other Gold Star families. So, wow. And so, what you said the new year is going to be, you have tunnels to
Tunnel to Towers. If
tunnel.
you're not familiar with them, it's a huge organization that began right after 9/11, and their name is based on the act of a firefighter that day who had just finished his shift and was leaving the city to go home when he heard what on the radio what was happening. Drove back to the fire station, got his equipment, and tried to take the bridge to the towers, but the bridges were closed for security reasons by then. So he took 60 pounds of equipment on his back and went through the tunnels to get to the towers to work to help. And he did work all day, but he ultimately himself was killed that day. So that's why it's called Tunnel to Towers, and or T to T. And they've been in existence since February of 2012, because it was right after 9/11.
Right.
Or
Wow.
2002, I'm sorry, February 2002, because it was right after 9/11/01. So and their primary gifts to the community and the charity is started mostly building homes for the surviving spouses who had dependent children, who's had died in, like, from as a firefighter, first responder in that day. And it's just grown now to taking care of the Gold Star families too, and making sure they have homes. And they do many other things too, but that's the big thing. And what I want to say about this, and I've just met them. We spent a week with them last week, and they are so amazing. They 95 cents to every dollar that is donated to them is used for their charity directly. So they're amazing. Just a really, and like I said, they're partnering with us this year, and so we will be traveling again and going to New York City, and I'm excited for that one. A lot of people on the East Coast have been asking. We were on the West Coast last year, and hope we can get back there again. But
Yeah. And I'm sure you'll love it in New York. We were just in New York, end of end of August, beginning of September, and we got to see the where the Twin Towers were, be at Ground Zero, and it was such an experience. I'm uh, very much an empath, and just being there, it was just like I said to my mom, like, I can't even really describe it. It's like a whole feeling while you're there, and so I mean, it's something that you have to go there to experience yourself. It's not something that you can put into actual words of what, I took pictures and everything like that, but just to experience it, to be there is something else. So yeah, that is so awesome that you get to partner with them, though. You know, who knows?
that
The world is your oyster.
that location reminded me when we were there like in 2012, I went out there, and it reminded me of my visit to Arlington National Cemetery. I had that same feeling, that of sacredness. This is sacred. So many lives were lost. So
Yeah,
it's a very sacred place.
absolutely, absolutely. And so, getting back a little bit now to your story, did you want to share a bit about the, what the poppy meant to you and that? And I know you s- I don't I know you had used the cup that your son had given you as well, incorporated that into your story. Did you want to share a little bit about that?
I do. I would love to. I meant to have it handy, and I didn't bring it in my room here, but I can probably pull up a picture of it if that helps later, maybe. But let me. I guess my story starts with. Well, I guess I'll start it with the beginning of the poppy story. Starts in the summer of 2003 when Danny was 16 and he went to Europe for the summer with a drama group, and he traveled with this drama group to 16 different countries. And he brought home a gift. Everybody got little gifts, and my gift was with blue cup with red flowers. That was really pretty. And as I was opening it up, he said, "I got to tell you about this, Mom. First of all, I want you to know it's a second." Like, I don't care. I would have known. It's beautiful. Thank you. As well. I saw it it was the only one. It was Scotland, Dunoon, Scotland, in a crockery shop. It was the only one like it. He said he just felt drawn to it and had to get it. And they told him, "Well, this is a second. Are you sure you want it? We'll see if we've got a better one." And they didn't. And he said, "No, I have to have this one for my mom." So that was really sweet. Now, at that time, too, we had never talked about military. That was never in the radar. In fact, my boys really knew very little about my dad, and the reason I didn't talk about the military is because my experience with my father, who was a World War II combat veteran, who came home from the war like so many of his generation and said nothing about the sights, the sounds, the smells, the horrors and atrocities he was exposed to, but he dealt with it. He drank and he drank and drank. And by the time I was born, which was more than 10 years after that war had ended, he had become a raging, violent, and dangerous man. And he did seek treatment, but not until his addiction cost him everything, including his health. And sadly, he only lived 2 years in sobriety. But during those 2 years, he discovered the healing power of storytelling through his connection with AA. And they tell stories every night, and they heal. So just before his death, he told me one combat story. And that one story answered the whys, every why I cried myself to sleep with as a child every night. And at 20, and I was only 21 when he died. He was quite a bit older, because I was at the end, and he had suffered a long life. And well, wasn't long in my book now. He was only 67, but I felt like at 21 years old, I understood that all of the damage and all of the pain in my family was the responsibility of the military, of the United States military. I dumped it all on them. And after the flag was folded at his funeral, I turned my back and I told myself I will never have anything to do with the military ever again. So, and my boys weren't born until many years after my father had died. So they didn't know anything about it. And we didn't talk about the military. But when Danny came home from his freshman year of college, best year he'd ever had academically, best year, which is unusual. He went off and just shined in college, and he made new friends, new adventures. I mean, he had a great high school career too with his brothers, but he decided he was going to set it all aside for a few years to enlist in the United States Air Force. And my heart fell to my feet. And I, spent that summer. We had discussions that summer. He discussed and I cried. That's pretty much what happened. And I kept praying that God would give me the words to change his mind, to talk him out of it. And in August of the end of that summer of 2006, now I'd had that really pretty cup, by the way, at that point for 3 years. I was drinking out of it every morning and just, really appreciated that sweet gift from him. And in August of 2006, one day I was out in the backyard picking, working in the back garden. And Danny quietly came out and kneeled beside me and silently started pulling weeds with me. So now every mom that hears this would know, like I did. And even if you had kids, or you know a kid, or you were a kid, you would know something's up. And sure enough, he had received notification that he was part of an exceptional group of recruits that was invited to be sworn in at the Chicago Air and Water Show in front of a general, be sworn in by a general in front of dignitaries. It was a high honor, and he really wanted me there. And I rocked back up on my heels while he patiently pulled weeds. Didn't say a word. I knew what was coming. He had already mentioned this all to me, waiting for confirmation. And I just cried out in my heart for the magic words that would change his mind. And I looked at him and I said, "This is so hard because I love you so much and I'm afraid." The moment I spoke those words, I was reminded of what I taught him and his brothers and sisters about love and fear. So those magic words didn't change his mind. They changed my heart. And I told him, because I love you more than I'm afraid of anything, I'll be there. And so the following weekend, my husband and I stood behind that velvet rope on a hot sandy beach in Chicago and witnessed what was up until that point the most honorable and noble ceremony we had ever witnessed. And when it was over, I told him I was humbled. And then months later, we were down at Eglin Air Force Base, where he graduated from basic training. Not Eglin, I'm sorry, Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, where he graduated from basic training in the top 10. And he stood so straight and tall in his crisp new uniform, and he talked to me about what commitment and integrity meant to him. The transformation was astounding. So that time I was impressed, and I told him. And then it was months later, we were at Eglin at the Naval School of Explosive Ordnance Disposal, which they refer to as EOD. Us civilians call it Bomb Squad. Bomb Squad, where he graduated with honors. First time through. And I've since read that only 30% ever make it through the first time, let alone with honors. So he was amazing. And that service was awe-inspiring. And I was so proud to be his mom. And I made sure to tell him. And then it was 3 years later, on October 5th of 2010, he was deployed to Afghanistan. And on that date, after a long day of disarming IEDs, and the militaries told us that they estimate 5 lives saved per each IED safely disarmed. Of course, that's an estimate. But they did 6 that day, so they had saved a lot of lives that day. And one of the traditions that Danny had started before he left for each deployment, after we hugged and said, "I love you," he would start walking, turn around and say, "Don't forget, I'm going to save lives, not take them." So he saved a lot of lives. And on that day, they were done. They wanted to call end of the day, and they had a bomb dog they were working with who kept going to the same spot over and over, indicating there was something there. And their equipment wasn't picking it up. And the combat engineer had gone back several times, and with the equipment, nothing there. They called the end of the day, and they were attached, the combat engineers they were attached to with infantry was the Canadian Army, because Air Force doesn't have infantry. So they would get attached to different branches, and this particular mission was the Canadians. And my boys were all born up in northern Minnesota, right on the border, right in the boundary waters. And so he felt like he had this special affinity with the Canadians, and he had made several friends, and he talked about one of them And you being a Canadian can appreciate this.
Yeah.
He told us, but we were like northern Minnesota. Said that. So right below Quetico Provincial Park. So they had all these plans to come in, meet with the brothers and the boy. We all knew about this guy he was particularly close to. So they were leaving the next day. So he told his teammates he was going over to say goodbye. And on his way to the Canadians, he walked past the area that the dog had been indicating there was something. And he stepped right on the pressure plate.
Wow.
And yeah. And there was only one life lost in that blast, thankfully. And when I came out of that thick fog of profound grief, the first words I could articulate was that I was grateful. Just so grateful that I had supported him in his journey with the U.S. military, which baffled a lot of my family and friends who knew my previous experience. And it got back to me, there were people saying, wow, if he hadn't been in the military, he wouldn't have been in Afghanistan, and he wouldn't have been killed at 23 years old. And that's all possible. But what I'm grateful for is that on that hot August afternoon, I chose to trust love over fear. And because if I hadn't, we all know our kids, he still would have gone to that noble and honorable, humbling ceremony in Chicago. I would have missed it. He still would have graduated with honors and in the top 10% from basic training and stood straight and tall in his crisp uniform. And there's a memory I carry from that I wouldn't have. At the end of the weekend, after we hugged goodbye, he turned on his heel and he started to glide away. And I always thought, basic training, they learn to march and run and jog in formation. But Danny just glided. And he glided away, and my husband leaned in and he said, he left home a boy. Look at that confident young man. And I wouldn't have that. And he still would have graduated with honors from the Naval School of Explosive Ordnance Disposal. And I would have missed that awe-inspiring ceremony. And he still would have been deployed to Afghanistan and been killed 7,000 miles from home on a dusty road. And the only difference there is he would have died not having heard me tell him how proud I had become of the man he had become. So I will forever be grateful. And that's one of the things that's important to me to impart to families, to find things to be grateful for, because that brings us, when we find what remains, whatever it is, we all have them, things that we can be grateful for, that starts healing us. And then when we can talk about it, telling our stories brings us healing. So to get to that poppy cup, after he was killed, that cup became the most treasured cup in the cupboard, of course, and I wouldn't let anyone else drink out of it or even wash it or dry it because they might break it. I used it every day. And in 2017, after having that cup for 14 years, I dropped it myself, broke right in half. And I thought, it's a good clean break. I planned to glue it back together and set it on my nightstand in pieces. And that year on Veterans Day, I was reading the biography of another Canadian. My heart is in Canada. Another Canadian.
We're glad to have you.
Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae. Do you know that name? Okay, so
yes.
I was reading this biography, and I'd gotten to the point where it said he was from a place called Guelph, Ontario, when I got a phone call. And it was one of those Canadians and it was the one specifically Dad had told his brothers about, Tim, who was going to come and hang out and all that. And it had taken Tim 7 years to call me because his transition was so dark. His coming home from Afghanistan was so tough, but he had gotten to a place where he could do it. So he made the call, and we talked, and I told him, I still want you to come and meet his brothers. We would love to. We heard about you. We want to meet you. come to join the family for our gathering, da da da. And he was very open to it. And then I said to him, I said, by the way, where in Canada, because it's such a big country, are you from? And he said, oh, I'm from a place called Guelph, Ontario. And I was like, what are the odds? You know? And I hung up the phone and I immediately thought of my cup. And something clicked after 14 years. I looked at that cup. Ran to my bed and looked at it. And I realized those red flowers that I had been looking at without seeing for 14 years were poppies. And I knew in that moment, immediately, that's why Danny was drawn and compelled to get that cup. He had to have that cup for his mom. And the message was to me that he was destined. He was destined to die on a battlefield. John McCrae, for anyone listening who doesn't know that name, he was a lieutenant colonel, army surgeon in the Canadian Army in World War I, and he's also a poet. And he wrote the poem In Flanders Fields, where poppies blow between the crosses, row on row. And it was from that poem that was published on December 8th of 1915, which is really just all of these little things that snapped together for me. December 8th is my birthday, and that was the day that poem was
Happy
published.
birthday.
Last week, but the point, it was like, oh, wow. And that poem made poppies viral for representing death on a battlefield. And I have now found such peace in knowing that that was Danny's destiny. He completed his destiny. And when I showed it to my husband and told him, he was like, oh my gosh. And he's like, do not ever glue that cup back together, because it represents your heart broken wide open. And it's more usable now than it was, because it's wide open. It loves more and accepts more, gives more. So I kept it in the two pieces. And just to take you to the very end of how we found out how Danny had said it was a second, what that turned out to be. This summer, as I was packing for one of our trips, one of our tour stops, I was taking some things out of my nightstand, and I saw the cup again, and I looked and I took notice, and I might be a little slow noticing things. Inside one of the halves was a blue flower with the Latin name under it. And of course, if you use it, you're not going to look at what's inside of it. So I didn't pay attention to it for years. And I noticed it was blue, and so I looked up the name. It said agapanthus, and that is also lily of the Nile, which is a blue flower. And so I thought, well, that's what made it a second, And then clearly it should have been a poppy, and the Latin name for poppy. And then I decided, for fun, to look up where agapanthus came from, the Greek words for that Latin word. And it came from two Greek words, agape, panthus, which is means flower, and agape is love, and it means God's love, unconditional, boundless love. And I knew that, but I hadn't read the definition in a long time, probably since I was a teenager. So I decided to look that up for fun too, and reread that. And I saw a word I'd never seen in that definition years ago. Boundless, unconditional, godly, sacrificial. Never saw that word there before, sacrificial love. And it all just came to me that's why that was a second, and why Danny was supposed to give that to me, because what happened was a sacrifice. And our founder, who wrote this play, has a line in the play that's part of his story. It's all real stories. It's a compilation. And there's a line that's his piece where he pulls off a remembrance bracelet that he has on his arm. And he says, I have 23 of these remembrance bracelets, because 23 men died doing what he told them to do. And he carries this weight of survivor's guilt. And I wrapped up that other half, and I gave it to him and said, next time that weight feels heavy, remember that this was their destiny. They chose to do something, to make a sacrifice. And nothing you did or said could have stopped it or caused it. That was there. And then and when I met with Tim finally, our Canadian who came to join our family, the first night we were all together, as it got late, everybody went to bed except my 3 surviving boys and me and Tim. And we sat around the fire, started out telling stories about the guys growing up in northern Canada, northern Minnesota, with and all the funny stories. But as the evening went on, it got more somber. And finally, Tim opened up and he said, "You know, I told you it was a dark time for me, and I went through a lot of treatment in hospital. Prior to treatment, had become addicted to heroin and alcohol and attempted suicide several times and then hospitalized. And during that treatment, able to treat the post-traumatic stress. And after 8 years now, at that point, it had been 8 years, no longer experiencing any flashbacks, no more hyperstartle reflex, no more nightmares, no using substances, and no meds. But the only thing," and he said, "that he struggles with at times, and that night was there really painfully on his shoulders and in his heart, he sometimes asked himself if the wrong man came home." And he told us that he was the combat engineer that missed the IED. And he was in the truck and he watched Danny step on it and he saw what happened. And that played a part in his 8 years of struggle. But when he said all that and we're all quiet and my boys were digesting it all, because of that cup, I was able to say, "Tim, the right man came home. Danny fulfilled his destiny. It was his destiny to die on that battlefield, not yours. Yours was to come home. So welcome home, brave warrior." And he said, after 8 years of professionals, family, and friends all telling him it wasn't his fault, it was Danny's mom that cleared that up for him and his heart and his soul.
Wow. Okay, so I'm sitting here crying. I don't know if anybody else is watching this, but you know, that is the power of sharing your story, right? And I love the way you tell it is like each time I get something different out of it because that's the second time I've listened to your story, and it is so powerful and so moving. And Jeffrey's sitting here saying chills, absolutely. Um, and you know what an honor to be able to sit there and talk with Tim, right? Like I can't even imagine, like just as much as honor for you as it was for Tim to be there, right? And I absolutely love that you are so familiar with with what some of the Canadians do because not too many Americans do. I love all my Americans, big love, but they just really don't have a clue what happens here in Canada. And so when you were sharing that, I was just like, oh, she gets it.
You know what else I want to tell you about you guys that's so awesome? Canada provided all that treatment and help for Tim. He's still active duty. He's been promoted since then. They worked with him. They honored that he was wounded and that it was a healable wound. And that doesn't always happen over here, sadly. And that's a part of our play too. The fear that our warriors, our American warriors, have of opening up and admitting they're struggling, because sometimes then they lose so much. So kudos to Canada and the military there and how they took care of Tim.
That is awesome because and I've been doing a lot of work within the United States with veterans and that, but I have not talked to too many Canadians. Even though, you know, well, my uncle served a long time ago, but he's been gone for 7 years. So sadly, I never got a chance to talk to him about his time. You know, we would go see him when he was stationed elsewhere occasionally, but we never talked about his time. And Jeffrey says, good hockey and really nice people in Canada. I'll take that. Yes, go Leafs. And I know anybody who just heard me say go Leafs is probably groaning and moaning because we haven't won. I get it. We haven't won a Stanley Cup in since 19 whatever.
Last century.
You know, my stepson can tell you the last time that they won a Stanley Cup. But anyways, he's not here right now. Kimberly has great Canadians and actors from Canada too. Yes, John Candy was one of them.
Yeah.
And oh, isn't our main guy from the Matrix? Isn't he Canadian too? I'm just waiting to see. Nope.
I
No,
don't know.
Keanu
There's a
Reeves.
lot.
I was looking at can't. I was
I
looking at
remember
Kimberly.
Bob
She
and
knows that.
Doug. Remember Bob and
Yes.
Doug from the 70s?
No.
You're probably not, you don't want to remember them. But anyway, let me just interject really quickly how honored I am to have Jeff here too, to share my story with a veteran. That to me is one of my goals with, I share my first story about accepting and supporting Danny and choosing love over fear and the gratitude I have. But the whole piece, the part about the cup and the message that I received, that a lot of veterans don't, they come home with missing pieces of their hearts that got left on the battlefield with their brothers and sisters like Danny, and they don't have somebody to tell them, hey, that was, it hurts, it's painful, I'm never going to not hurt from it, but I also know that was Danny's destiny and not the destiny of our precious warriors who come home. And that's why I want to tell that story too for them.
Absolutely. Yes, I know. I've talked with so many veterans that, they have that, not only do they struggle with their PTSD, but the survivor guilt, right? And like, what if we could have done this differently or that differently, and having nightmares from that. And like you said, you know, each person's destiny is different. And very thankful that you decided to get on board with Danny before everything happened, so that you could he knew that he was loved and honored and cherished, so that he could do his job without having to worry about mom back at home being upset. And it's funny because one of the Angels 14 calls that I was on around Veterans Day was the families that are back home, the moms, the wives, the girlfriends. It's you guys back home that makes them be able to do their job with their head on straight, and to just be able to focus on what they need to do. Because let's face it, when you go into war, you need your head on straight. You can't think about what's going back at home, right? And so they on Veterans Day, they had really stressed, our veterans had really stressed that they just really wanted to say thank you to the spouses, to the moms, to the ones that were holding everything back at home down, so that they could focus 100% on what they needed to focus on. And I know Jeffrey's wife is absolutely pivotal in him being successful in his career in the military, because it's he didn't even know half of what was going back on at home, because she wouldn't tell him until after the crisis was averted, right? And so so kudos to you, Mom. Good
A lot
job.
of, yeah, that is so true, and so many of our civilians don't understand that. They don't. I mean, and I say they like this because I was a civilian, but now I'm a military family. But prior to that, I had no clue. I mean, if you have a little bit of a clue of what our veterans are sacrificing, we don't have a clue what the families sacrifice and go through, and the heart, the every time there's a knock at the door, every time the phone rings late, if it's an off time, the knot in your stomach, in your gut, and that's one of the parts of the play, Last Out, deals with that. It shows both what's going on in Afghanistan and what's going on at home. And there's a scene where Danny, the character's name is Danny too, which kind of he's in Afghanistan, and it won't ruin anything for me to tell you he dies in Afghanistan. It's part of the beginning of the play, but he has a hard time letting go, and he has to see what his family went through. And it's very, very powerful. And most couples that come to the show that are, veteran and ones not. Their drive home, it was words always come back to us. The drive home was always different from the drive there. Things were shared that they never knew, and it's really powerful and healing for everybody.
That is so amazing. We're going to have to, when you know the 2024 schedule, let us know, because I will have to make a point to get somewhere to watch it. I just by how you're talking about it, it's just okay. That's one of the things that is a must do for our 2024 season here with Unstoppable Overcomers. And with that, though, I'm going to bring up the lovely and amazing Kimberly Genovese, our roving reporter, who is all the way in, I believe, Arizona tonight.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
welcome back this week, my partner, my friend.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's so great to be here. Holly, you have been so amazing tonight. Everything that you guys are up to is just really incredible. And it's a real privilege to get to be with you tonight. Thank you. Thank you for showing the world what's possible. In a world where, just the whole time you guys were interviewing tonight, what just kept coming up for me was like, war and armies, and there's just the ridiculousness of it all, right? Like it just a carnage of human sacrifice and waste, just present to the waste of it all. And yet, now see, Dorothy, now it's my turn to start crying. Just to be a bright light in the midst of all that. There's so many different ways you could go with it, and you choose to stay a bright light, and you choose to bring just such a beauty and a grace.
Oh, thank you.
To it all. And it's a real privilege to get to be here with you tonight.
I appreciate those words. I really do. Thank you so much. One of my favorite quotes is, and I don't know whoever said it because I haven't been able to find the person to give credit to, but I think it's some kind of paraphrase anyway, but that there are times when God uses our greatest pain to launch us into our most important calling. And that's what I feel this has done for me. This is my greatest calling now that my kids are grown, that I can be there and help our warriors and their families to know that the pain's not going to go away. It won't. But that hope, peace, and joy can be restored and then coexists, and it makes the pain easier to carry for the rest of your life. It's really true. And so that's my calling.
It really is. And what I hear in that is like the birthing, right? Birthing pains, because I absolutely agree. And I've gotten the gift of personally experiencing, right? And I dare say all of us have to varying degrees. It's part of getting to be a spirit in a human vessel and getting to choose what we do with it. And if we do choose to have it be a birthing pain of transformation and transcendence, by golly, what a beautiful world we can be part of and be living in. So it's an honor to carry light with you, Holly.
Yes, I just
really.
Thank you for your words.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and with that, in the space that we have, which Dorothy, ironically, is 11 minutes and 11 seconds, I'm just saying. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, the angels are shining. And I'm just giving up the Kimber space because you were so great to say it at the beginning. But so I said that, and I'm just really quick, 30 seconds, thekimber.com. Check us out. We are committed to your point, Holly. Our logo is a lighthouse. We bring light where there's darkness, right? And it's specifically inside of your dreams getting fulfilled and any concerns about scarcity or lack when it comes to time, money, and people. So please feel free to check us out. That being said, Holly, we would love to hear what your fundamentals are.
Okay. My first one, and this goes back to my story, is choosing love over fear and over everything. It is number one. The next one is kindness. It is, both of these are things we can do. It's our choice. They're our choice. And we can always choose to be kind. And then the last one is being authentic. And again, it's a choice to be authentic in our love and our kindness.
Holly, that's so great. And Dorothy, what I got to give up is there's like a beep in the background, and I'm praying it's not coming through in the transmission. So that's why I muted myself. Holly, I can't step over. I mean, obviously your fundamentals are they're not only fun, they are very simple, which is really, really great. And I love the conversation about kindness. So if I may, to make sure the audience is clear, when we talk about kindness, we're not talking about being nice.
Oh, that is perfect. It is
right.
My husband made an issue of that for so long to me, that nice is not it, not where it's at. It's kindness.
Yes.
It's a different animal.
They're opposites. Yeah.
Nice isn't always or often authentic. Nice is
right. Right.
That has been our talk of 2023.
So make sure the audience is clear. They're very distinct and separate. And we're not saying in the unstoppable world, we're not saying that nice can't not be nice, right? But to be very, very clear, that sometimes you got to really look at nice, because sometimes nice by definition is you're saying something, to your point, Holly, you're not being authentic. You're not actually saying that which would make a difference. And you're more concerned about the conflict to say something that would actually be kind and make a difference for the other person. You're not willing to put yourself out there for the other person. You're just being nice, right?
Nice can be easy. Nice can be
right.
Very easy.
Amen.
Kind is always easy.
It's a whole nother ball, right? It's a whole nother ball. So, and kind is all about the other person.
Yep.
It's all about them. So, just inside the world of the fundamentals and making sure love is love, right? This is so beautiful, right? And authenticity is pretty straightforward, right? You're either naked or you're not, I like to say. There's no in between. You're naked or you're not.
You're pointing out the difference between kindness and nice is so awesome, because that's been a big topic in our house. So thank you for saying
you're
that.
so welcome. And I just want to make sure they were clear, because as far as the audience goes. So thank you. It's been such a privilege to get to do the fundamentals with you tonight. Dorothy, back to you.
What a rich episode. Love it. And it's so nice to now I'm gonna use the word nice in this. It's so nice. I knew you were gonna say that. It is so nice to be able to share these stories. They're heartfelt, they're authentic, they're real. This is not some kind of story that is well, who knows? It could be a movie one day. But the thing of it is life transformation for everybody involved, right? From the person that it happened to the people that hear it, because they realize okay, watching Private Ryan or something like that shit is actually real. It does happen, and it just goes to show you that Holly is a mom that has lost her son out in battle, and this affects a lot of different people. So thank you, Holly, for being authentic and sharing your story. And like I said, that's the second time I've heard it. I don't think I cried the first time. This time it was just, I don't know, it was a lot I mean, it was powerful both times, but I don't know. It just hit me hard. I've been watching a lot of those soldiers coming home reels on TikTok, and I cry every single time. And and anyways, it's just one of those things that it should be year round, not just at Christmas, but unfortunately it happens more at Christmas. And I got to go play not Santa, I guess, but I got to go do that with my nephew this weekend out in Illinois. And so that was exciting. I did do a video, but I haven't posted it yet. I'm debating because it's kind of raw on his end. So who knows?
Well, you could play inside of Holly's fundamentals and just put it out there.
I could do that.
Yeah.
Authentically, I could do that. Yes. Stay tuned, folks. I'll get it out by the end of the week. There's a little bit of editing. There's too much dead air at the beginning of that video, so I gotta tighten it up a bit. But yeah, in the spirit of being authentic, we will do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard you also being kind and loving in editing the video.
That's kind.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much to all our listeners for tuning in with us. And thank you so much, Holly, for sharing your story. What an incredible story. You'll definitely have to let us know when the new plays come out. We will make it a priority to get in there and see at least one.
Or dates. We have a website for the play. It's lastoutplay.com. And that it's so easy, lastoutplay.com, and we have a schedule, but right now it just had our final show, which was last week.
Okay, perfect. I'll put that in here in the comments. It takes a second. Sorry, my computer is slow. There we go. Lastoutplay.com. Go check that out. Get a hold of their 2024 schedule. Come join us as we go see Holly and we watch this play, and bring tissues. I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
bring tissues.
I usually try to make sure my families all have them because that's my job. I take care of those families of the fallen that I bring in and reach out to before the play. But yeah, be sure you have tissues and know that our play is really just a breaching tool for emotional breaching tool. And we use that because that's storytelling. And then we have our workshops and storytelling, it heals the heart and it mends the soul. And it goes back long before we ever had written word. Storytelling is how we remember things. We've lost that in writing and data. And there's a book called Death by PowerPoint that we quote in our workshop about how only 8% of the people remember about 8% of what data when they walk out of a PowerPoint presentation, but a story they'll remember. So
Absolutely. And that's why we have this platform, so people can share their stories, so the world to hear. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Holly, again, for sharing your story. Guys, we have a giveaway. We are starting before I forget, before we wrap this completely up, we are doing a 12 Days of Christmas giveaway. But there is something that you have to do in order to get your name in there. You have to sign up. Yes, you must sign up. I'm putting it in the comments right now. So if you go to this, it's in the comments, so don't worry. You don't have to memorize this long thing here, this long Google form, but go fill out the Google form, get your name in the draw. We are doing 12 Days of Christmas giveaways where if you are a creator, we're giving away a month where you can put your content on our channel. There'll be books, each copy of my book. Plus I have an extra copy of Created No Way Out here. Plus we are doing coaching, a free hour coaching session, not only with myself, but with a health and wellness session with April Pankin. So definitely it's going to be an exciting 12 days. We will start drawing at 5:00 tomorrow. We'll do a quick draw for everybody who's in there, but keep signing up each day. We want to hear from you. So yeah, that is our gift back to you guys for joining us each week. So get that form filled out. Thank you so much. And guys, don't forget, be unstoppable in all that you do. And remember, same time, same channel as next week. Bye for now.